Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Ready, Scrap, Shoot by Joanna Campbell Slan, narrated by Amy Mcfadden. 1. A blood-red splotch flowered slowly on Edwina Fitzgerald's chest, marring the cornflower blue of her St. John knit suit. I notice things like that, colors, textures, and patterns. My name is Kiki Lowenstein, and I'm a scrapbooker. I admired the growing red blossom as I peered through the viewfinder of the video camera, but I didn't realize what I was seeing. Not at first. I was mesmerized by the colorful spectacle, the annual Charles and Anne Lindbergh Academy's May Day celebration. Actually, I was deep in concentration. This was the first time my mother-in-law, Sheila, had trusted me with her new camera, and I hoped to do a good job of capturing the amazing pageantry. Only later would I realize that the strains of Mozart's Turkish March had masked the sound of that first shot. Pop, pop, pop came the percussive series that followed. The blasts were rhythmical as taps on a snare drum. A scream pierced the dulcet music. "She's been hit!" yelled someone. Another loud pop. I instinctively turned toward the sound, but all I saw was a nearby stand of trees. "It's Edwina!" another voice cried. "Get help!" I panned the camera back to Edwina and watched her slump over in her chair. Blood gushed from her chest onto her lap. With a jolt, I figured out what was happening. "Sniper!" I yelled to my mother-in-law, Sheila. "Hit the ground! Grab Mom! I'll get Anya!" I tossed the video camera to the grass and ran. I could smell my own sweat, a combination of exertion and fear, as I pumped my arms. The music continued, but screams pierced the melody. I raced toward my daughter, Anya. She and 40 of her classmates stood holding colorful ribbons that twisted partway up the maypole. Sprinting past the other girls, I grabbed my kid's hand and shouted, "Run!" Ping! A shot hit a folding chair not 10 feet away. The peppery scent of gunpowder filled the air. Anya hiked her lacy white skirt above her knees and jogged along beside me. I guided her toward where I'd been sitting. I briefly considered running away with my daughter to make sure she was safe, but I couldn't leave Sheila with responsibility for my mother. I had a hunch Mom was not going to see the urgency in our situation. Anya and I dodged spectators and stunned families frozen in place as they tried to make sense of what had happened. The crowd was collectively shocked and unable to act. Several turned to stare at me and my kid as we zigged and zagged. "She's hit! She's hurt!" Deanna Fitzgerald stood over her mother-in-law's body. "Help! Somebody help! Please!" "Call 911!" yelled Edwina's son Peter to no one in particular as he bent over his fallen mother. He'd no more than gotten out those words when a bullet pierced his left thigh. With a yowl, he jumped and grabbed his upper leg. Crimson blood flowed through his fingers and covered his slacks. "I've been shot!" Peter Fitzgerald roared. "Someone call 911! Turn off the music!" A ping indicated another metal chair had been hit. A sniper was in the trees, shooting at people. This couldn't be happening. But it was. From the trees on our left came 2 more explosions. Pop, pop. The fresh spring green leaves ruffled in the sweet spring breeze. My mother and my mother-in-law sat shivering under overturned gray metal chairs. I shouted, "Get up! Those were gunshots! We have to move!" Sheila hopped to her feet. My mother didn't move. "Come on!" I handed Anya over to Sheila. I reached toward Mom and her familiar scent of chantilly. She fought me, pushing me away and crying, "My purse! I can't find my purse! Forget it!" The music had stopped. The May Day dancers froze in their positions, looking around for direction. A couple of the girls burst into tears, and a few cried out for their mothers. Panic began in earnest. Parents snatched up children, women screamed and grabbed their purses, men shouted orders and tugged at their wives. Students headed toward the shelter of the main school building. We were ahead of the pack, but not by much. Behind us, metal chairs clanged and banged as people knocked them over in their haste. A security guard pointed at the stand of trees and yelled into his walkie-talkie, "We've got a situation here." A few good Samaritans stayed to help Edwina and her son. Someone yelled, "Get an ambulance!" The older girls, who'd been seated in rows, broke formation on the sidelines, huddling and hugging each other through tears. Once confusion gave way to fight or flight, we'd be trampled. "Move it!" I screamed, grabbing Mom's elbow. I started dragging her. She fought me every inch of the way, tossing her head and throwing up her arms. She'd always been a pain in the butt. I had half a mind to leave her there. But she was my mother, and I loved her. Anya forced Sheila to turn around and come back for us. "Grandmère, we have to run! Please!" My daughter bent to my mother, reaching out for her hand. Fear pitched Anya's voice higher than normal. "Which way?" panted Sheila as she doubled over with her hands on her knees, trying to catch her breath. We scanned the area, trying to make sense of this impossible situation. "The parking lot!" I yelled. The crowd surged toward us like a wounded beast, roaring with pain and anger. Running for the cars wasn't much of a plan, but it was the best I could muster. Anya kept pace with Sheila. They were half a football field ahead of the crowd, but I was losing ground. I had my arm around my mother, and she was literally dragging her heels. "My purse! I need my purse!" she whined, turning and pointing behind us. I did the best I could, but it was hard to hurry someone who was protesting every step of the way. Sheila made a fast assessment of the situation. "We'll need to carry her." Without discussion, we formed a basket with our arms and scooped Mom up from behind. Sheila and I staggered under Mom's weight. Miraculously, we caught our balance and stumbled forward. Sheila held up her end, and I mine, as we struggled over small rocks, patches of gravel, and uneven ground. Despite our burden, we made headway. We cleared the top of the hill. The lot wasn't far away. "Stop it! Put me down! My shoes! I've lost my shoes!" She swatted at us as though we were pesky mosquitoes. "Stop it!" Sheila hissed at her, but that only made Mom angrier. "Kiki, leave me alone!" Mom hauled off and slapped me on the side of my face with her open palm. The pain staggered me. I lost my grip on Mom and dropped her. For a second, all I could do was massage my stinging skin in wonder and spit blood on the ground. I felt the imprint of her hand glowing red on my cheek. "My word," said Sheila. "How dare she?" She dared. My mom had always cared too much about the little things and too little about what mattered. Here we were, trying to run for our lives, and her only concern was her purse and her shoes. My child, her granddaughter, could be killed, but my mother wasn't about to lose any wardrobe pieces. My eyes watered in response to the pain, and, yes, in part to her cruelty. But it wasn't the first time she'd struck me. So I wrestled with my emotions. This was no time to break down or fall apart. I needed to act decisively. Sheila, Anya, Mom, and I stood on the crest of the hill. The parking lot sprawled before us. The crowd nipped at our heels. Our only option was to move forward. The slope was in our favor. Worst-case scenario, I could roll Mom down the hill. Gravity was my friend. But Mom had other plans. She dropped to her knees and crab-walked back the way we had come. Fortunately, I'm faster than she is, and I weigh 10 pounds over the number on my driver's license. Those additional pounds gave me leverage. Instinctively, I grabbed the back of Mom's jacket and her belt. With a mighty heave, I lifted her. Her feet scrabbled the ground, but she came along with me. I carried her much the way a mother cat does her kitten. If you asked me to do that again, I probably couldn't. But I managed during the crisis, and that's all that mattered. "You're going too fast," Mom whined. "Slow down." Instead, I picked up the pace. A hysterical mob trailed behind us. Their fear announced them in a swelling cacophony of snapping twigs, mewling cries, and tramping feet. I turned my head to see a blur of faces, getting nearer with each step. I hustled Mom along, barely keeping up with my mother-in-law and daughter. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest at the dead weight I carried. My right fingers froze in a grip on Mom's collar, my left hand locked onto her belt. Somewhere in the scuffle, I'd lost both my shoes. My feet throbbed, and blood covered my right big toe. But all that pain paled in contrast to my will to live. If we stopped now, if I paused to catch my breath, we'd surely be trampled. And I wanted desperately to live. I had a child to raise. I had a man who loved me, Detective Chad Detweiler. I muttered to myself, "Detweiler, Anya, Detweiler, Anya," and their names kept me going. Despite the pain in my clenched fingers and tortured feet, I kept moving, hauling Mom along with me. Behind us, men yelled, women shrieked, students sobbed, and children cried. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. The cavalry was coming, and not a moment too soon. 2. What a difference 25 minutes can make. Earlier, my priorities had been entirely different. Less than a half an hour ago, the only safety that concerned me was the safety pin holding up the skirt of my borrowed navy suit. Its head dug into my skin, pinching me. My control top pantyhose cut off my air supply. The only matching pumps I could find at Goodwill were too small. Not only did my heels sink into the soft ground, but my big toes screamed in pain from being crammed into too small of a space. Other than that, I was having a jolly good time. Not so much. "Kiki, quit digging at your waistband," my mother hissed. We rode side by side in the back seat of Sheila's Mercedes-Benz, traveling to the May Day celebration. "Try for once to act like a lady. Well-bred people do not adjust their wardrobes in public." "Sorry," I mumbled. "For goodness sake, Kiki," Mom continued her rant. "Anyone would think you were brought up in a barn." Yada, yada, yada. Mom kept up a steady harangue about my ill-mannered behavior, my general worthlessness. Usually this was Sheila's job, but in light of my mother's superior snarky qualities, Sheila held her tongue. Finally, even she had enough. "Mrs. Collins, please. Kiki's a Lowenstein now. We don't treat each other that way." Since when was I considered a Lowenstein? This was big news. Browbeating me had always been Sheila's primary form of recreation. Maybe watching my mom give me what for made Sheila feel left out. Or maybe she got a glimpse into how she herself acted when Mom wasn't around. Whatever. I sighed and enjoyed a few moments of blessed silence. Mom harumphed and stared angrily out the window of the luxury sedan. Unconsciously, she clutched her purse to her chest. Looking over at her, I noticed how frail she seemed. Once upon a time, my mother towered over me. These days, I stared down on her head of thinning hair. When I helped her into Sheila's car, I was shocked by how pronounced her bones were, how clearly I could feel her skeleton through her mottled skin, and how lightweight she was. In more ways than I could count, my mother was a shadow of her former formidable self. Old age was taking her away from me, slowly but surely. However, Mom was still determined to be independent, and she still had her pride. As we drove up to Calla, the Charles and Anne Lindbergh Academy, the fancy school Anya attends, a tiny gasp escaped her. "What is this? A city park?" "No, these are the school grounds. Calla owns more than 100 acres, said Sheila proudly, before listing the various captains of industry who were alums. explaining about the $94 million endowment and extolling the virtues instilled by the school. When Sheila slowed to a stop, Mom turned to me and said, "I knew you had money." What Mom didn't say, but she left hanging in the air, were the words, "You are so selfish not to take care of me." Mom and my sister Amanda had campaigned vigorously for me to send my mother a monthly allowance. The amount they suggested was exactly what I took home each week from my job at the local scrapbook store where I work. "Mom, I'm broke. We are fortunate that Sheila pays for Anya's tuition," I said. "She also takes care of all my daughter's books and most of her clothes, her cell phone, and any extra fees like her lunches and the yearly donation that's expected of families." That shut up Mom, but I knew she wouldn't be quiet for long. She was determined to prove that I should be giving her financial assistance and that I was a bad daughter by not helping her out more. She and Amanda had decided I was living the high life. Nothing I said would change their minds. In fact, I was pretty sure that the entire purpose of Mom's visit was to expose me as a tightwad and a fraud. As best I could tell, my mother had decided that an unannounced visit would be the best way to verify that I was holding out on her. Once she could verify that I had money, I'd be shamed into honoring her requests for a generous monthly allowance. If that was the plan, their scheme had failed miserably. Mom quickly saw the painful truth. I was barely getting by. If she thought my life was a picnic, well, she'd underestimated the number of ants swarming my basket. I worked overtime to make ends meet. I cut corners whenever possible. I wore clothes from resale and thrift shops. I ate leftovers. I drove a creaky BMW with a leaky convertible roof. In short, I was a nickel and a dime away from going under. Shoot, I wasn't just underwater. I was 20,000 leagues beneath the sea. My mother also learned that my mother-in-law was nearly as critical and demanding as she is. In fact, Mom actually had the nerve to ask me why I put up with Sheila. "After all," Mom sniffed the day after they met, "your husband is dead, the two of you aren't really related, and the woman is obnoxious." I have to admit, Mom was right. Sheila could be a real pill, albeit a well-dressed pill at that. More than one admiring glance came her way as Sheila slid her long legs out of the Mercedes. Her lovely periwinkle boucle suit brought out the silver highlights in her hair and the blue of her eyes. She looked every inch a lady, which she was, until she was provoked. Then she could be a real harridan. She had demanded I wear a suit, blouse, and pumps to the May Day celebration. "I don't care if it is out of doors. It's a venerable and important moment in the school year. You need to make more of an effort to be part of the school community. I won't have you embarrassing Anya or me." Yep, no doubt about it. Sheila could be a real stinker. Sometimes I wondered why I put up with her. I had pondered this as Anya kissed each grandmother goodbye before the May Day celebration ceremony. Sheila stood on tiptoes and waved after my child. "Have a good time, darling. Enjoy yourself. You look lovely. You'll be the prettiest girl here." Okay, that was why I put up with my mother-in-law. After her son died, I decided that no matter how she treated me, Sheila was good for my child. She positively doted on Anya. The education my daughter received at Calla was the finest money could buy. Correction, the finest Sheila's money could buy. My mother-in-law's affection and her willingness to foot the bill for my daughter's pricey tuition forced me to suffer the 1,000 slings and arrows that Sheila lobbed in my direction. Sheila's generosity helps my daughter fit in at school. She makes sure Anya has whatever extras she needs, all the little frills that her peers take for granted. This was very, very important at a school where most of the families owned vacation homes in Telluride or Jackson Hole or Palm Beach or wherever the rich and trendy go to oppress the poorer classes these days. Me? Bitter? Heaven forfend. Thanks to Sheila's support, no one would ever guess that the fashionable Anya Lowenstein went home at night to a teensy one-bathroom house, or that Anya's mother made little more than minimum wage while working at Time in a Bottle, a scrapbook store. So, yes, I put up with Sheila. We've had our moments, but overall we supported each other because in our heart of hearts, we agreed on what was important. Anya. 3. Because we arrived late, all the spaces near the ceremonial grounds were filled. We drove over to the auxiliary school lot. School security waved us into a makeshift spot along the pickup lane, then ushered a Hummer in behind us. The huge vehicle blocked our egress. I hated the idea we couldn't leave when we wanted, and I anticipated Mom would whine and want to go home way before we were ready. But there was no help for it. The annual May Day celebration was the biggest event of the Callis school year. If you wanted a primo parking space, you needed to arrive at least an hour in advance of the ceremony. Despite my warning, it was time for us to leave, and in spite of Sheila urging her to hurry up, my mother had taken her own sweet time primping and running to the bathroom. As a result, Anya arrived a good 45 minutes after the time specified by her advisor. I would have to call the school and beg them not to send her to detention. Sheila was furious. Mom didn't care that she'd inconvenienced us all. When she realized she'd have to climb a small hill to get to the natural amphitheater where the festivities took place, Mom turned to me and said, "I'm not going. You can't make me." I tried cajoling her. "I know it looks like a hike, but really the pageantry is worth it. Come on, Mom. Watching this will take you back to your days in show business. Wait till you see the dancing." "No." Her mouth formed a flat, unyielding line. "Take me home." "I can't. First of all, this is Sheila's car, not mine. Second, look around at the parking lot. See the Hummer that's blocking us? We can't get out. Third, I would miss the ceremony. I want to see my daughter dance around the maypole, and I definitely want to scrapbook this. Besides, Anya's excited about her costume." My daughter wore a full white skirt with a lace overlay, a blue blouse with poet sleeves, and a multicolored sash tied in a big bow at the waist. In her hair were silk daisies. She looked like a fairy princess. "I don't care. I want to go home. Right now. Call a cab for me, or a limo service." Even if I wanted to, I couldn't afford either. It shocked me that my mother still didn't have a clue about how I lived. When she'd found out I was pregnant, she'd washed her hands of me. "You made your bed. Now lie in it," she'd said, and hung up the phone. I will always remember that day and how alone I felt. That will never, ever happen to Anya. As long as I walk this earth, I will have my daughter's back. Mom didn't even send a card of congratulations when I got married, nor did she care one whit about her first grandchild when Anya was born. I dutifully sent photos and chatty updates, but Mom never showed the least curiosity about my daughter. And then my sister called, telling me to go pick Mom up at the airport. I wasn't sure how long she was staying. She'd arrived with 3 overstuffed suitcases. Anya sat huddled beside 2 of them in the back seat, but the last one wouldn't fit in my trunk. It would be delivered to my home at a princely sum. Clearly I was in the wrong business. I mean, how can it cost that much to deliver a suitcase? They don't bark, pee, or chew your furniture, but the porter charged me more for the trip than I get to dog sit for a day. Was this a last-minute decision?" I asked as we drove away from the terminal. "Yes." "Are you planning to be with us a while?" "It depends. This might be a long visit," she said. I wanted to say, "How long is long to you?" so I could count down the days and hours. But Anya, bless her heart, jumped in and started narrating the drive for her grandmother. I had to admit, my daughter made a good tour guide. pointing out where Bob Cassilly, a famous local artist and eclectic sculptor, revised a section of historic fencing by turning it into a chorus line of ghostly figures. The neighbors were not pleased. I guess some folks don't have a sense of humor. Mom listened politely to Anya's commentary, not saying much. Neither did she take the opportunity to ask Anya anything about herself. The only test my mother ever aced was the physician's desk reference test for narcissism. "Grandmother," Anya began, "will you be here long enough to visit the local sites, such as the City Museum, the Art Museum, and our zoo?" Mom hesitated. "Maybe, maybe not. I prefer to be called Grandmère. That's French for grandmother, and it sounds so much more elegant." "If you do decide to stay a while, you won't run out of clothes. You brought a lot of suitcases," I pointed out helpfully. "I like to make a good impression," said Mom. "The right clothes are important. One never knows what functions one might be invited to attend." Definitely sounding like a long visit. Ben Franklin once observed that fish and visitors both stink after 3 days. I had a sinking feeling that the carp in my passenger seat was here for the duration, swimming around and fouling up my personal fish bowl. Was it possible that my sister Amanda had gotten fed up with our mother and given her the old heave-ho? Mom had always doted on Amanda. However, knowing my mother's mercurial temperament, that could have changed. Why else would Mom have come to St. Louis? From what I'd heard, she loved living in Arizona. According to her, she was the reigning queen of the retirement community. Had she stepped on too many toes and been politely asked to leave town? I wondered if I'd ever learn the true reason behind my mother's visit. I prayed she wouldn't be staying around for long. Over the years, I'd grieved the loss of a nurturing mother. I'd come to grips with the fact my mom didn't much care for me. Because she was geographically removed, I could compartmentalize our relationship. I could pretend she was dead. But having her as a house guest would change all that. As we pulled onto my street, Mom pointed to the big house on the corner. "Look at that! It's a mansion!" She stuck out her chin and said, "I knew it. You moved from one big house to the other, didn't you? All this poor-mouthing was just an act. You're too cheap and too ungrateful to help your mother." I fought the urge to gasp. Cheap and ungrateful? That stung. Anya reached over from the back seat and squeezed my shoulder gently 3 times. 3 squeezes are our secret code for "I love you." I might be a rotten daughter, but I was raising an empathetic, kind young woman. Anya's compassion in the face of my mother's accusations touched me. I couldn't speak for the lump in my throat. Rather than explain that the big house wasn't mine, I concentrated on getting my emotions under control. We drove around the big house and into the driveway of my actual home, a converted garage. "Are these your servants' quarters?" Mom asked as I turned off the engine. "No servants, just us. This is where we live." Anya jerked a thumb over her shoulder at the big house. "That's Mr. Leighton Haversham's place. He's really nice. Famous, too. He's an author. Authors make tons of money, you know. One of his books was made into a movie." "But Kiki owns part of a store," Mom persisted. True, I was proud to call myself part owner of Time in a Bottle, St. Louis's premier scrapbooking store. However, I've quickly learned being a minority stockholder means I have bragging rights and not much more. If the store does well, I hope to bring home a bonus. If I don't get that extra money, I won't be able to buy new tires for my car, get my dog her rabies shots, or eat meat for the next couple of months. Yeah, it's really that bad. 4. Anya and I brainstormed a list of activities we might do with Mom, but running from sniper fire had not been on that list. Clearly, this was an oversight on our part, because here we were, doing exactly that. We raced over rough terrain, running away from the sniper and toward the parking lot. I had the bloody feet and aching muscles to show for our efforts. Anya's cheeks glowed pink, and a sheen of perspiration dotted her upper lip.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?